Rain didn't remember falling asleep, but a sudden noise woke her. She waited and peered into the darkness, wondering if the sound would repeat itself. A loud knock at the door made her heart skip. She sat up, pulling her frayed blue terry cloth robe from the floor, and wrapped it around herself, cinching the belt. By the back door, her cup still lay on its side where she'd left it. She had forgotten about it in the confusion of the police call. She picked up the cup now and sat it on the end table. Against the carpet, the tea stain looked like blood in the dim light. Another knock at the front door startled her back to the moment. She looked out. A policeman was standing on her doorstep, gazing down the street. He had a strong chin in profile and a pointy nose. He was young, with blonde hair that stuck out from beneath his cap. He looked back toward the door and raised his hand to knock again as Rain opened it. "Ma'am," said the officer, "you put a call in about a trespasser?" He looked past her into the house concernedly. Rain nodded and looked over her shoulder to see what he was looking at. Behind her she could see the blood-like tea stain. "Yes, She wasn't sure how to finish. "I saw some shadows and they came to stand at the patio?" Sure, if she wanted to spend the night on the 7th floor of the hospital. "Well, I thought I saw a man in my yard, but it turned out to be shadows. But then he was at my patio, and he was definitely a man. But then he disappeared." She groaned inwardly. "Funny farm, here I come." "I see," said the policeman, and took out a small notebook. He scrunched his eyebrows together. Rain looked down at his notebook and cleared her throat. Yeah." She laughed and pinched the bridge of her nose with 2 fingers. I wasn't even sure I was really seeing him." She searched for an explanation other than "or if I was crazy," and decided on "or if I was dreaming." The policeman nodded and tilted his head slightly. "So what exactly happened?" "Well, he showed up." "The shadows." "Yeah, the shadows. They stood at the back of my yard and stared at my window. Then they disappeared and I figured it was just shadows. I came to the kitchen for some tea." The policeman gave her an odd look, and Rain thought what it must sound like to hear someone say they had an ominous trespasser but stopped for refreshments. I didn't see them go anywhere," she explained. "I don't know." The policeman looked unconvinced, so Rain continued. "I got my tea, looked out the patio door, and he was standing right there on my patio. I called 911, but in the middle of the call, I looked up and he was just gone. I thought—" She trailed off. "You thought what?" he pressed. Rain took a deep breath. "I thought maybe I imagined him." The policeman nodded, scribbling in his book. "Is there anyone else in the house with you?" His gaze returned to the tea stain. "No," Rain said, looking over her shoulder again. "I dropped my cup. My tea? There's no one here." As she spoke, she thought about whether she should be telling someone she only assumed to be a legitimate cop that she was alone in the house. "I'm sorry, what did you say your name was?" she asked him. "Officer Daniel Munsey," he said, and pulled a card from the back of his notebook, handing it to her. Rain hadn't realized that the police gave out business cards. She took the small white rectangle in her fingers. On it was Officer Munsey's name and badge number, above Boonesboro Police Department, followed by an address, phone number, email, and website URL. "Can you describe him, please?" The policeman waited, pencil poised. "He was a little taller than me. I'd say 6 foot. His hair was dark, brown, maybe black. I couldn't tell what color his clothes were. They looked like jeans and a long-sleeve shirt. Long hair, short hair, skin color. I'm not really... not short, but about to here." Rain touched her fingers to one of her prominent cheekbones. "Like he'd let it grow out or something, you know? He was medium-skinned, at least it looked like it, but in the moonlight it was hard to tell." The policeman nodded again. At least he's agreeable, thought Rain. She looked past him to the street. His car was parked at the curb. She could see a styrofoam gas station coffee cup sitting on the dashboard, and wondered if this was one of the more exciting parts of his evening, if he spent most of it looking for cow-tipping teenagers. "Ma'am, I need your name, please." He looked at her questioningly. Rain blinked. She hadn't thought about her experience going down in records somewhere. She thought of it being filed, authorized, and reviewed. The idea struck her as unnatural and invasive. Before her, Officer Daniel Munsey waited, eyebrows arched over pale blue eyes, lips a thin line of expectancy. It's Lorraine. Lorraine Hersey, she said, loathing the sound of her full name as it escaped her lips. Her name had always been a point of contention with her. When she heard it spoken in her mind, it was always with a southern backwater drawl to it. Lorraine. Officer Munsey scribbled in his book. Thank you, Miss Hersey. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to call the number on the card I gave you. I'll take a look around the property now, if you don't mind. Not at all, Rain said and shook her head. The business card still held before her. Officer Munsey turned and walked toward the corner of her house, his utility belt rattling with his keys, his gun, and trappings of duty. Above his right shoe, beneath the cuff of his trousers, she could see a small bulge. Probably an ankle holster, she thought, and closed the door. Rain tore several paper towels from a roll on the counter, pulled a can of carpet cleaner from beneath the sink, and headed toward the tea spill like in the living room like a woman on a mission. She turned on the lights, but it made her feel exposed and vulnerable, so she turned them off again and tried to clean up the spill as best she could in the pale moonlight. When she finished, she'd gotten most of it out. Only a faint trace could still be seen. As she walked to the kitchen to put away the cleaner, she looked out the window over the sink. Officer Munsey's car was gone, and she felt a distant sense of unease as she walked to her bedroom. She lay across her bed, staring at the darkness above her. Now and then she sat up to look out across the yard, but the man-shadow did not return. Several times she thought she'd fallen asleep, only to catch herself blinking at the ceiling. After a large number of uncomfortable witching-hour minutes, she realized that the unease she'd felt stemmed partly from having explained the encounter to the policeman. The act of it had made her possible visitor somehow more concrete. It made him feel real. Admit it, she said to herself. Somewhere you want him to be real. It's better than being crazy. She rolled onto her side, facing the window, staring at the square of night sky and wondering if she really believed it.